ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930 present The Drive.
It is Monday, April 8th. Your drive begins now on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to have a busy show for you this afternoon. Our text line will be open in a few minutes. Go ahead and get those in now. We'll start taking those at 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. We got a lot to get into today. We also have a guest coming on the program a little bit later on. First and foremost, we got to touch on the news. Yesterday, it broke. Kim Caldwell, indeed, leaving Marshall, heading to Tennessee after one season. It was a memorable season. Marshall won a Sun Belt Conference regular season title, a tournament title, and then an appearance in the NCAA tournament. She's going to be paid about 3 times more than what she made at Marshall. Also, Tennessee is going to be paying about $600,000 to buy Caldwell out. Very hectic yesterday. A lot of mixed emotions on social media from Herd fans. A lot of people were happy for her. Obviously, Tennessee hasn't won a national championship in a long time. But it's still one of the premier programs traditionally in women's college basketball. It's one of those programs where I remember going to the Tennessee Marshall game years ago, and when I bought a beverage, cups had the likeness of not the football coach, not the basketball coach on the men's side, but it was all based on women's basketball there. It's huge. Women's basketball is a big deal. And so that's one of those premier programs that, well, if you get an offer to go play there, you might look at it. But if you get an offer to coach there, you're really going to look at it. So I give her a lot of credit for having a tremendous season at Marshall University and able to make that leap to Tennessee. I mean, look, this is one of those premier programs. You know, they might not have won a national championship in a long while, but at the same time, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get back to that prominence. So big deal for her yesterday. And then I saw a lot of people maybe upset the fact that she left. If you're going to offer me $750,000 base salary, I'm leaving Kindred Communications right now. Bye. See you. I love working here. I like my boss. I like the people I work with. But if you offer me life-changing money, I'm working for you. And that's just business. And it is life-changing money. It's an opportunity for her. She wants to be the best. Well, you got to go somewhere where you can be the best. And she's going to have a lot more resources, a lot more to work with. And she could have built something special here at Marshall University, but I'm going to be quite candid with you. Could Marshall have ever gotten to the point where Marshall won a national championship in women's basketball? Well, we'll never know, but it's an uphill battle. And so one of these dream jobs opened up for her, and she took the job, and now there are a few names that are floating out there. I floated some up there yesterday as well, and we're going to get into a lot of those later on the program. Jenna Burdett's one of those names, and I think she should get a serious look. She's still someone who knows the program. She's still someone who probably can run a similar style. I mean, there's a lot to like about her, elevating her to be the head coach of the women's program. But there was a release yesterday after the news broke, and Christian Spears has indicated that there's going to be a national search, and so there should be. You want to go ahead and look at all your options, see if you have a job that might attract someone. And that's not a slight on anyone that I just mentioned, like Jenna Burdett. You want to take the opportunity to see what you've got, what your program looks like. But I think that she's a name that would be interesting and would be someone that I would give a serious consideration to. I'd have no problem with her being elevated. Also, a name that I heard from a couple of people that is a name of interest, Kari Pickens from Division II Ashland. Her resume is very similar to Kim Caldwell's. So I think she should get a serious look. And then there was an interesting name that came up in a few conversations, Lynn Bria. Remember Lynn? She was a G at Marshall. She's from Charleston. She's got lots of Division I experience. She's with the Hatters right now. And so there's someone that could bring some stability to your program. And, of course, it's going to be a rebuild again because the transfer portal is here. And already there are 5 Marshall women's basketball players in the transfer portal. We'll go over them a little bit later on. But the Hayes sisters are among those, and Sydney Scott is in the transfer portal, and Mahogany Matthews in the transfer portal. So there are a lot of names that are in the transfer portal right now, leaving Marshall basketball, and I'm not surprised by that. So we'll get into your text this hour, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Also, of course, on the men's side, Kentucky losing a coach. John Calipari is going to be at Arkansas, which is probably a win-win for everybody. He gets out of Lexington. He gets to go to a program that's willing to spend some money, and Kentucky doesn't have to buy him out. So a lot of mixed feelings there. But Arkansas looking to spend money, NIL money available there, might be the right fit for him. That was interesting. That happened yesterday as well, and I'm sure more people are going to be talking about that. And, of course, we've got the NCAA Men's Championship game tonight. We go on the air at 7:30, live from Phoenix. Going to be Purdue versus UConn. Listen to the game right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. March Madness coverage brought to you by Doghouse Beer Garden. So, all of that's happening. Basketball making a lot of big news, big splash, and then we're going to turn our attention. It was a pre-arranged interview. I booked this a few days ago, so we're going to honor our commitment because that's what we do. We honor our commitments, and I'm excited for the opportunity anyway. So I know we want to talk women's basketball. We want to talk about Kim Caldwell. We're going to have plenty of time to do that today, tomorrow, the next day, and forth. So we're going to take a slight diversion here in the next few minutes because AEW is in Charleston. They're having a live event on Wednesday. If you're familiar with AEW, it's one of the top 2 wrestling promotions that are out there right now. It's the alternative to the WWE, and a big night for the WWE, by the way. But we'll get into that later. So AEW having a live show in Charleston, back after a few years for a live broadcast. This will be on TBS. It's Dynamite. That's the name of the show. If you're not familiar with it, it'll be on TBS on Wednesday. And then I think they're also doing a taping of Rampage as well, one of their other programs. And so one of the names that, if you're an old school wrestling fan, you'll know this name instantly. It's Tony Schiavone. He's going to come on the program here in the next few minutes. We're going to talk to him about AEW. You might remember him. If you go back a ways, I don't need to tell you, but if you don't, and you're a wrestling fan of any age, he's been calling wrestling since the good old days on TBS. This was World Championship Wrestling. This was before it was WCW. He was calling wrestling matches on TBS, the Superstation. He has worked briefly in the WWE. He has been involved with decades of wrestling, and he could have at one point been the play-by-play voice of James Madison. He's a baseball guy, but he had an opportunity to be the football play-by-play announcer. So he's going to join us on the program here in a few minutes. I'm looking forward to talking to him, and we'll give him an opportunity to talk a little bit about the event coming up Wednesday in Charleston. I'm excited for it. You got live wrestling back in West Virginia, in Charleston, the capital city. It's going to be broadcast live on the Superstation. They don't even call it that anymore. I go back a ways. It's still a Superstation to me. But Tony Schiavone is going to join us on the program here in the next few minutes. We'll talk to him. And then we will open up the text line. We're going to make plenty of time for you there. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. So we're going to wait for Tony to call in. He's going to join us, and we will talk a little bit about wrestling with him. Like I said, big night last night. If you were watching, a lot of sports options for you. You had the NCAA Women's Championship game where South Carolina beat Iowa 87-75. We had WrestleMania. We'll talk all about that later when we continue on this edition of The Drive.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
We're going to open up our text line in just a few minutes at 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Big news yesterday, Kim Caldwell accepting the job to be the next head coach at Tennessee. Big payday coming Marshall's way. We'll find out here in the next few weeks who Marshall will be able to bring in to replace her. A tremendous season for Coach Caldwell. That's coming up. But I want to briefly take a detour because I got the opportunity a few days ago to bring on the program Chris Statlander, and I kind of said, okay, that's great. I like Chris. She's fun to watch, but if you're going to bring someone on from AEW, you better sweeten the deal and give me Tony Schiavone. And that's how he's on the show with us now. I used you as a bargaining chip. Mr. Schiavone, welcome to the program.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for using me as a bargaining chip, man. My wife uses me as a sounding board, so you can use me all you want, bud.
I'm going to plan on doing that because
okay.
You mean a lot to a lot of people. Does that get old? Do you at some point go, okay, it's enough now? I get it. You know, I'm Tony Schiavone. I get it. Does that get old?
No, it never gets old. I'm so appreciative of everybody who remembers my career back in the day, as they say. I just came from WrestleCon in Philadelphia, where I did autographs and took pictures and signed my bobblehead and signed my action figure. That's in itself, saying I have an action figure blows me away. And everybody was just so appreciative of my career and said so many things about, you know, you're the voice of my childhood. I grew up listening to you. You meant a lot to me. And that means a lot to me. It really does. Sometimes, Paul, I think that, geez, my career, and it's been great, but what has it meant as far as, I don't want to try to get so deep here, but, you know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a research scientist that helps people. What have I done except just call wrestling? But when I realized that I meant a lot to people growing up, then that makes me feel good. So I'm always appreciative of hearing that. I never get tired of it.
Yeah, it was a big deal for a lot of us. I'm 52 now, so in my childhood, it was a big deal because you got to watch wrestling twice on Saturdays, and it was also on Sunday as well on TBS, the Superstation, because we only had like 4 or 5 channels, Tony, and you were on one of them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know that the old TBS days were great days. I was very fortunate. You know, Paul, you kind of sometimes in life are in the right place at the right time, and I was. I was a baseball announcer in '81 in Greensboro, and then I got hired to do baseball in Charlotte the very next year in '82. It just so happens the people that hired me was Francis Crockett of the Crockett family, and of course they did wrestling. And there I was in '85 when Jimmy Crockett said to me, "Hey, we'd like for you to be one of our guys on the Superstation." And in April of '85, I started doing it, and well, look at this. Here I am all these years later.
Now, I don't want to put too much heat on you, but I'm going to have to. You are a graduate of James Madison University. You're JMU Duke. And, of course, that's a big rival of Marshall University right here in Huntington. So already it's a little heat for you. And you had an opportunity to actually be the play-by-play voice of the football team back in 1980. They've done tremendous stuff over the years, and it's a growing program. But, how different would your career have been if you would have decided to do football and be the voice of the Dukes, starting football in 1980?
Yeah, that would have been one. That's one of those forks in the road, right? And I really agonized on that, but I really wanted to do. I just graduated from James Madison. I really wanted to do baseball, and I was working at a radio station in Stanton, Virginia, WTON, and I had a full-time job. As soon as I graduated from college, Paul, I had a full-time job, and I was full-time working for them doing sports. I had an air shift. I did afternoon drive, and right out of college, and the JMU job came up. I applied for it, and I got it. I still have the in my boxes somewhere. I still have the letter from Rich Murray, who was the sports information director at that time. I got the job. He called me. He said, "You got it if you want it." I said, "Okay." I went to my boss at WTON, and he said, "You can't do it." He said, "You can either work full-time for us or you can work for JMU." And I thought about it, and then I had applied for a baseball job in Greensboro, and I got that. And I said, well, I'm going to do baseball. That's what I want to do. So I said no to the JMU job, and, well, here I am. And I guess maybe I still could be doing college football somewhere. But the state of college football right now, the way it is, I'm so glad I'm not a part of it.
I think you made the right decision. You're
I do
more
too.
you're more
Yeah.
beloved and more memorable now than ever. And how do the younger people who possibly could not have watched you originally on TBS and during the days with WCW, how do they respond to you?
Well, a lot of them, are with their dads, especially when they were. There have been a lot of kids that have been with their dads, and I found this out this weekend, that know about me as an announcer because their fathers will, go to the network, because I'm all over the network, right? I'm all over Peacock, and they'll go to there and they'll say, here's an announcer that I grew up and listened to in the 80s and 90s, and they will listen to it and be a part of it. I think that's the great thing about wrestling, that parents have handed down their love of wrestling to their kids, and we see a lot of that these days. And I know there's kids out there that don't know who I am, but we have a lot of kids that come to our shows. I still go out and I still get the love from the fans, and I still give the kids a lot of high fives and shake a lot of kids' hands. So they're into it, right? And they love AEW now, and so their love of AEW kind of rubs off on me.
My guest is Tony Schiavone. He is the play-by-play announcer for AEW. Also, a recent honor for him. He's the 2024 recipient of the Gordon Soley Award, and that's a name that goes back a long ways for those of us who have watched professional wrestling for years. And I'm sure he meant a lot to you in your career. He was the voice before probably you were the voice for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, he did World Championship Wrestling, and then it was bought by the WWF at that time, and then they sold their time slot to Jim Crockett. So when the NWA came back on at 6:05 after an absence, fans expected Gordon Soley to be there. Well, it wasn't. It was me and David Crockett. A lot of the fans weren't happy about that. And we did get a lot of letters. I try to answer every letter that I got about it. Where's Gordon? He's really the voice of the NWA. We need him back. But you just hang in there. And the good news is when I went to the WWE in 1989 and stayed a year, when I came back, Gordon was working for WCW, and I got a chance to work with Gordon. He and I did Worldwide Wrestling together. So I'm very honored that I'm able to say that I have worked with some of the great guys ever in wrestling: Gordon Soley, Jim Ross, Jesse the Body Ventura, Bobby Heenan. And I know I'm going to miss Excalibur, Taz. I better say Taz's name or he'll listen to this and say something to me about it. And Nigel McGuinness. I've just worked with some of the real greats in wrestling, and that's one of the things I'm so thrilled about, that I've been able to work with so many great people throughout the years, and my career touched them, and they touched my life.
My guest is Tony Schiavone. AEW is in Charleston. That's coming up on Wednesday, and it's always fun. I think the last time I was actually in Charleston for a wrestling event was probably either a WCW NWO pay-per-view or a Nitro that you were probably calling. It's been a while since I've actually done a live broadcast show, but it's been exciting to watch the growth of AEW. It's opened up a whole new world for a lot of performers that maybe you wouldn't have known of before. I really didn't know who Kenny Omega was, the Young Bucks. I didn't know who these people were before AEW, and now there's just a whole list of superstars that there's a whole new world out there of professional wrestling, and AEW is at the forefront of it.
Yeah, that's true, but the Kenny Omega was still very well known because of the internet and because of wrestling fans being able to watch Kenny Omega and what he did in Japan, and being to watch what the Young Bucks had done on the independent circuit, so to speak. And so there is still very much familiarity with those guys. Old school guys like yourself will probably go, like you said, I don't know who Kenny Omega is, but then you see him and you think, oh my God, he's tremendous. But we have, I think, here's the great thing for me about AEW. It has given guys another opportunity to wrestle on a big stage that they really didn't have before. And this is not a knock on TNA or Impact or anything like that, but being able to have your product on TNT and TBS is a big deal. And when we signed to be on TNT in October of 2019, I can't believe it's almost 5 years ago. That changed the landscape of wrestling, and I think it changed it for the better. I want everybody to succeed. I want us to succeed. I want the WWE to succeed. I want independent wrestling to succeed. I think if you're a wrestling fan, you really want everybody to succeed. I really believe that. And now we've given guys a chance to show what they can do on a big time, almost a cable station, but it's almost streaming everywhere now. So, but we given it's been good for wrestling that we have so much exposure right now.
What makes AEW fun for you to still want to do this?
Well, I love working with Taz, Excalibur, and Nigel McGuinness. I have a blast. And what I think makes it so fun is that, of course, Taz was a wrestler, Excalibur was a wrestler, Nigel was a wrestler, but they all got into wrestling because they loved pro wrestling. I got into wrestling because, well, I was lucky, but also because I love pro wrestling. So I think all of us sit down and call these matches and genuinely are excited about what we're seeing. And that makes for a fun experience. I really have a blast when the countdown to 8 o'clock on Wednesday night or 8 o'clock on Saturday night on Collision goes down. I really get pumped up for it. Don't get nervous. Get excited, get pumped up for it. And that's what's fun for me. And also what's fun for me is being able to work with these young kids because many of them, just like we talked about, are in their maybe in their young 30s, early 30s, and they remember me and love what I do and have respect for me, and I get to work with them and help their careers. I think that's what we do. We make the show fun, exciting, try to make it watchable. I think we do, but we also are helping careers of kids to move on and become big stars. So that's very exciting to see us. And I know we had a hand in this. To see us elevate somebody like Eddie Kingston, who for years and years and years just toiled on the independent circuit, never got a chance to wrestle the big time. He came in here, and now he's a big star. And I think we had a hand in that. So I'm really, really excited about that.
You mentioned just a moment ago helping the younger generation, and there's a person that's wrestling the main event that is always helping the younger generation, but it's still fun to watch him, and that's the natural Dustin Rhodes. And you have called Dusty's matches, his late father, who many of us, he's one of the reasons why we became fans, and you've been calling his matches for years, and he's going to be in the main event. And just how special is that for you to have such a continuation of being along for the ride with Dustin and previously with Dusty?
Well, I was very close with Dusty. He is the man that gave me my first play-by-play job, because before we went on TBS in '85, I was doing Worldwide Wrestling, and he's the one that put me on Worldwide Wrestling because he was the booker back then. So I have a very, very loving relationship with Dusty, and also we traveled together a lot in the same car from town to town, and I got to know him. And so then I was there when Dustin started, and I felt a big part of his career. I remember when he started thinking, man, this kid is just tremendous and is exciting and is athletic and can do a lot of things. And now here we are decades later, and he can still go. It's just absolutely amazing that he can still go. And, his story is very well documented about how he struggled with addiction and how he has battled back. And that is a great story to be able to say, hey, I'm here when Dustin Rhodes came back from all of that and battled his personal demons and came back and became such a great star again. Every time he wrestles, he gives us a great match. There's no question. And I think he'll give us a great match against Samoa Joe coming up on Wednesday night, live on Dynamite and in the Charleston Coliseum. By the way, you mentioned I went to James Madison. Well, I'm also from Virginia, and I'm from a small town called Craigsville, Virginia, which should not be mixed up with Craigsville, West Virginia, because I know there's a Craigsville in West Virginia too. It's a point that we talk about all the time on the podcast.
Nice. And of course, I forgot to mention, you do have a podcast where a lot of people can, listen to some of the stuff you're doing now, and of course, stories from, quote, back in the day as well. And for maybe someone who's hearing you for the first time or for the first time in a long time, where can we find that podcast?
That podcast is on the Cumulus Radio Network or the Westwood One Radio Network, what it used to be. It's called WHWW, not WCW, but WHW, like What Happened When Monday. And you can just go to WHWMonday.com and find the podcast. Conrad Thompson and I watch old matches and talk about it as we're watching it together. It's like two friends watching a wrestling show together on TV and commentate it. And we have a great time, talking about some of the silly stuff that we did back then, and being able to rip on me about some of the stupid things I said back then. And we have a great time. And you know what? A lot of people have said to me, your podcast made me laugh, made me smile during the pandemic. It helped me through the pandemic. And again, it's another thing that makes me so proud of what I've been doing as of late. If I help somebody smile because of what they went through during that very tough time.
I'll put you on the spot. And you can't say Sting. You can't say the last match with Sting because
Okay.
that's just too easy. But if you have a favorite match other than the last match with Sting, what would it be?
I was with the Crockett family, and it was a very mom and pop organization, very small time, but they did very good stuff. In '89, I started working for the WWF, and about a month later, they put me on MSG Network with Lord Alfred Hayes, and here I was in Madison Square Garden calling Hulk Hogan and the Big Boss Man in the steel cage. And I never will forget that moment because I had never experienced Madison Square Garden. I had never seen any, everybody who had followed wrestling and had got the magazines back in the day knew all about Madison Square Garden, but I had never been there. And I did the match, or did the whole card with Lord Alfred on an afternoon. It was like noon or something, and it was a matinee. And then we got in a plane and we flew to Boston, to the Boston Garden, and we did a telecast for the New England Sports Network that night. Alfred and I did. And I remember thinking when it was over and we were having dinner that night, very late dinner at an Italian restaurant in Boston, thinking, man, I've really come. I've come of age, man. I've done Madison Square Garden and Boston Garden in the same day. And it was, right during the height of Hulkamania, as you know. So that day was my most memorable day of ever calling matches by far.
Yeah.
And
that sounds amazing.
It is. It's really amazing when you think about my career. And it was my first exposure to the real big time. And I never will forget that day.
Okay. Now, I took Sting off the table because that had to be probably the most fun you've had in a long time. If you can have even more fun just calling a Sting match, because you're connected with him in so many ways. A friend of mine who works at a different radio station, I won't mention his name, I know he's listening, he was joking, you've got Tony on the show? Because, again, we talked about wrestling a lot in college.
Right.
He was like, can you get him to say, it's Swann? And I'm like, no, I don't think I can do that. But you're so linked with Sting because you're genuinely excited every time Sting is on screen.
Yeah, when he first came back to wrestling, came back to AEW, they had me start saying it's Sting, and I remember thinking, did I really say it's Sting back in the day? And I guess when he first rappelled from the ceiling back in the NWO days, I went back and listened to it, and I guess I did say it. I didn't. I don't know if it's me getting old or not. I didn't remember me saying it. But I said it, and it became kind of a fixture of AEW. And I remember joking with Taz and Excalibur when Sting would come in. They would step out, and I would say, it's Sting, real loud. And then after we go to the commercial break, I would look at those two guys, say, okay, I'm done for the day. You guys take over, because that's all I'm here for. But that we just did that jokingly. But, yeah, it's it's fun. It's fun being, again, when I talk about the great people that I've been a broadcast partner of, how about the talent that I've been known to be associated with? Sting, all the years of holding the microphone for Ric Flair, for the Horsemen, even held the microphone for the Macho Man, for Hulk Hogan, just legendary performers that I've been there for, calling their matches, holding the microphone for. That's spectacular. That is a great career. If it ended right today, I can look back and say, man, what a career I've had.
I think you were even a run-in character in one of the video games back in the day as well.
Was it really?
I think so. I know Heenan was.
I didn't get. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't get paid a cent for it then. Okay, no, I'm kidding.
I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, no, I did. I got paid for it, but I think you could. I could think you could use me as a character because my kids were young back then, right? And they used to use Dad as a wrestling character, which I guess for a kid having his dad as a video game character is pretty cool.
If I recall correctly, because it was a PlayStation game, I think you could summon you and you could come in and interfere. Of course, it would lead to a disqualification, but it was still worth it.
Right. Yeah. I've interfered in a lot of things in my career, so why not in the video game?
Tony Schiavone is with us, and I won't keep you much longer. I know you've got a busy schedule, but coming up Wednesday, live in Charleston, it's going to be Dynamite. Also, Rampage is going to be there. You've got a busy schedule. Looking forward to live wrestling again here in West Virginia in Charleston, and hopefully you'll come back soon and we can get you back on, to talk a little bit more about your career in AEW.
Yeah, Paul, I really appreciate you being you calling me and us being a part of this, and I don't know if you can make it out or not, but I'd love to see you out. We genuinely have a good time. It's been a long time since we've been in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'm glad we're back because it's always a great fan base. Again, we've had some big events there in the years past, so we've developed a very good wrestling base there, fan base there, and I look forward to being back. So, again, Dustin and Samoa Joe is going to headline that card, and we got a lot of great stuff on television that we're going to have. It's 2 hours, and then we record Rampage after we go off the air live at 10 p.m. We record Rampage with some great matches, and so I'm looking forward to going back and seeing all the fans once again. The fans have been so good to me; they really have. I recently lost my best friend, my dog of 13 years, and when I walked out the very next day, because I did go to work the next day on Saturday. When I walked out the very next day, one of the fans says, "God bless Bug," which was his name. I heard that from the fans, and that meant so much. So I know we got great fans who appreciate me and appreciate what we do. And working for AEW has been the greatest experience of my life. And they're probably people listening say, "Oh, he's just hyping up AEW." No, it has been, because Tony Khan is such a great person and has made me feel so welcome and loved my career. And it's just been a really fun 5 years, or almost 5 years, that I've been a part of this. So, and of course, really what makes it great is going out and listening to the fans and hearing the fans pop for what we do. That really makes it worthwhile.
Well, hopefully it's going to be a fun card on Wednesday, and then that means that AEW will come back and we'll do it again and again. It's been a true pleasure. You've been somebody, again, I don't want to make you feel old, but you've been someone I've been watching, again, you've heard this enough, since I was a child, and it's always been a blast to watch you call a match. And, maybe I'm in broadcasting partially because of the cool stuff you were doing.
Well, thanks, because I've done a lot in broadcasting, not just with pro wrestling. I had 18 years where I didn't do pro wrestling, got to do minor league baseball again, and got to do some football and basketball. So I've done a lot. So thanks for that. It's been a great career.
Tony Schiavone, everyone. Thank you, Tony. It's been a pleasure. We'll hopefully do it again soon.
All right, Paul. Anytime, man. I appreciate you.
That's Tony Schiavone. We're going to take a quick timeout, come back. We will get your text in, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. This is The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Thanks for being a part of today's edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann, and thank you for indulging me a little bit. Big opportunity for me to talk to a guy that I've been watching for a long time, and Tony Schiavone. And if you're heading up to Charleston on Wednesday, give that guy a shout out if you would, because it was part of the childhood for a lot of us to listen to him call those matches on TBS, the Superstation. So that was fun. We're going to get your text in just a few minutes, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. We're sort of in a holding pattern right now because, what do you do after you lose a head coach? Who do you go after? Kim Caldwell leaving to go to Tennessee after leading the Herd to a Sun Belt Conference regular season and tournament victory, and, of course, an appearance in the NCAA tournament. She's going to be making about 3 times more than what she did at Marshall, and, of course, you're going to get the buyout as well. And there's going to be a lot of rebuilding in the Marshall women's basketball team, as that's probably going to be the norm. You're losing several players because Now that your head coach is gone, and the reason why you came to Marshall, you're losing several players. And Mahogany Matthews is leaving. Sydney Scott is in the transfer portal. The Hayes sisters are in the transfer portal, to name a few. Tara Harness is in the transfer portal. I'm probably missing someone because somebody has put themselves in the transfer portal, probably as this show has been going on. And so it's important that you make the right hire for the next coach, whomever that's going to be. And there are some interesting names out there. Now, a lot of people are already saying, look, no, you've already got the coach. It's Jenna Burdett. She's the coach. Put her in. And I'm not against that. And that's not a bad choice. I totally would go for that if she was named the coach of the Marshall Thundering Herd. But at the same time, there will be a national search, and I don't think that's disrespectful to her. I think it's different than the men's situation because you had a coach-in-waiting situation. So when Dan D'Antoni was done, there was a plan in place to transition over to Cornelius Jackson. And I don't think that that's a bad hire as well. I mean, he's been the coach-in-waiting, so you honor those commitments, and he will have an opportunity to change Marshall basketball more into his image. This is what Cornelius Jackson basketball looks like. I'm the coach now. And he'll get that opportunity, and I hope he succeeds and he does well. And you didn't go through a national search there because you already had that deal in place. Coach in waiting, you honor that. And that's something you should appreciate, that Marshall University honors its commitments. And so it was committed to Cornelius Jackson. Dan D'Antoni no longer the coach. And so you elevate him, he's going to do just fine. He's going to do just fine with the basketball program. And on the women's side, you've been to the pinnacle now as far as the Sun Belt's concerned. You've been to the pinnacle. Does that make the job more attractive? Does that show you that you can win at Marshall University? Now, again, Kim Caldwell, she's kind of something special here. She's been successful wherever she's been. She's won at every level that she's been in. So that's why Tennessee would be attracted to her. And I have no problem with her taking that job. And if you have the take of that's bad, what she did to Marshall was bad, or Marshall's going to be a stepping stone for the rest of its life, and if you have that take, yeah, Marshall's going to be where a lot of coaches will have success and then move to bigger programs. There are only two places you can go for Marshall, up or down. That's it. You can go up or down. You can make a lateral if you want. That's fine. I get that. But you can only go two places. When you take the job at Marshall University, you're either going up or you're going down. That's it. You take the job at Marshall with the potential to move up. If you don't succeed here, you go down. Not too many jobs where you can go further up. You take the job at Tennessee, you don't go further up. Very few programs will allow you to go further up. If you're at Tennessee right now, that could be UConn maybe? South Carolina? That might be a little bit higher. But you take a job at Marshall University and you be as successful as you can be in certain sports, and then you go up. And that's fine. Billy Donovan did it for basketball. He was having some success here, and if he would have stayed a few more years, maybe Marshall could have elevated the program even further, but an opportunity came open for him, and he took it, and it worked out well for him. By the way, he's rumored to be a possible candidate to replace Coach Cal at Kentucky. I would be interested to see what that would look like. I've always liked Billy Donovan, and again, I appreciated what he was able to do for Marshall University. But, to just have the take that it's bad that Marshall's a stepping stone, I mean, every job is a stepping stone. There's always a better job out there. There's always a better job. Not too many jobs that are, okay, I'm here. This is the best job. I can't go any further. And Tennessee's pretty much at that point. Like, okay, it doesn't get much better than Tennessee. Football, it doesn't get much better than Alabama. It doesn't get much better than Ohio State. It doesn't get much better than Michigan. It doesn't get much better than insert one of your top-tier Power 5 schools. Every other job is sort of a stepping stone. I mean, there will be some coaches that will stay at a university because they like where they're at and they feel like they can achieve what they want to achieve. I mean, for example, Marshall men's soccer, not necessarily a stepping stone job. You can win at this level at Marshall University. It's completely different. It's apples and oranges here. Marshall is able to be competitive in men's soccer at Marshall University to the point where it's an attractive job and you want to stay here. And it could be close to the top, if not one of the very top jobs. Same thing with some of the other sports you're trying to develop. Women's soccer, there's a push to elevate women's soccer as well. You got to see what women's basketball could look at the very top for a year at Marshall University. That excited a lot of people. Now it's up to the administration to try to carry that momentum forward, make a smart, good hire to continue that progress, and hopefully this just means the next best coach is out there available, and they will take the Thundering Herd to the next level, or maybe they'll turn Marshall into more of a contender, a perennial power in the Sun Belt. But it's going to be very hard to top a program like a South Carolina, like a Tennessee, like a UConn. Takes a lot of money. That's something that the athletic department is not flush with right now, cash. And so I've always said this, if you want nice things, you're going to have to pay for them. Quick timeout. We'll continue. Open up that text line, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. This is The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Let's go to the text line, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Texter says, Paul, it's going to be difficult for Christian Spears to promote women's basketball unless the next coach plays a similar style as Coach Kim. It was exciting. I don't know if that's going to be a prerequisite for the next coach, play an exciting, upbeat style of basketball that's going to attract fans, because it is a juggling act. You want to win. You want to attract fans. You want to win. You want to attract fans. If you're winning, you might attract fans. We've seen Marshall women's basketball win before, not necessarily attract fans. This was an exciting style of basketball. It was lightning in a bottle. Marshall was able to captivate a new generation of Marshall women's basketball fans in one season. Hopefully that will continue for the Thundering Herd. Also, Texter writes in and says, Paul, you got to promote Jenna Burdett. She's got to be the head coach of the Thundering Herd. It just makes sense. We'll get more of your text in tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have more news as, of course, Marshall now looking for a women's basketball coach. We got a busy slate of action for you tonight. The men's championship coming up tonight, Purdue versus UConn. We'll go on the air 7:30 right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I appreciate the diversion today with my guest, Tony Schiavone, AEW in Charleston for Wednesday. It's Dynamite, broadcast live on TBS. Should be a fun one. And, of course, we've got Marshall and West Virginia baseball. My mistake. That's a slip of the tongue right there. That's coming up on Wednesday as well right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
Retransmitting on Glorious FM on 94.1 W227BS Huntington. This is 930 WRVC Huntington, celebrating 100 years of broadcasting.